Here. Setting up Zoom. All right. All right, I think we're just about there. All right, so let us get started. Hello, everyone, and thank. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. What's going on?
I am. I've got to close a window there.
Oh, okay.
There we go. All right. A little echo. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight. We are so very excited to host this live poetry discussion with Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. Before we get into the event, I just wanted to cover a couple of items. First off, that this program is part of the Lift Every Voice, Why African American Poetry Matters initiative. It is a National Public Humanities initiative of Library of America. It's presented in partnership with the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, and it's in generous support with the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and Emerson Collective. Library of America has also published a fabulous new anthology called African American Poetry 250 Years of Struggle and Song, and that is available at the library today. Um, it is so fabulous. um, and also, I would also like to invite everyone to check out our Read Woke reading challenge. You can find that at ucitylibrary.org. It's just a really fun, cool way to experience authors from a variety of different identities, to really kind of, enliven, broaden your reading experience. So again, that's at ucitylibrary.org. And lastly, as part of this discussion, since we're in Zoom, there is a lot of ambient noise with Zoom. So if you could mute your microphone until you're ready to talk, that would be great. I will be doing that here in a moment. And I think at this point, without further ado, she is a poet, an activist, an educator, a scholar, a podcast host, among many, many other things. And we are very, very lucky to have her here with us tonight. I would like to have everybody join me in welcoming Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond.
Hello, 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 everyone. I'm so glad to see you all. I'm so glad you could make it. Is there a participants list? I want to say everybody's name. Yes, there is. Hello, Lindsay, the esteemed librarian. I was just explaining to Lindsay how much I love librarians. I collect them as friends. So Lindsay has been added as one of my librarian friends. I want to say hello to Antoinette, hello to Katrina, hello to Karen, and hello, and there's a name that won't show. There we go. And that's everybody. I'm so glad you all could make it. I know that this is a strange time. And then to compound with that is this election, the much contested, rancorous election. I feel like the queen of understatement right now. There's got to be more words to describe this current election season. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I wanted to share just a couple of items with you as we were going into our discussion. So I'm going to go back just a little bit. The title of the program is Lift Every Voice. African American Poetry and the Freedom Struggle. And I am Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. So, I started to call this presentation, Do Poems Matter? And then I had to get real with myself because I have always thought that poems mattered. If you're wondering who that, look at that little youngster there on that screen. That's a 19-year-old Dr. Treasure Shields Redmond. A lot of people don't know this, but I've got a secret history. When I was in high school, this daughter of poets and artists got a record deal with MC Hammer's record label. So I decided to take poetry into the realm of hip hop. And let me tell you, I did not become a household name. You know how I know? Because y'all didn't know this about me. But suffice it to say, I was obsessed with verse. I wrote it. I literally carried around a notebook in my hot little hands, starting in 8th grade. And every day I would write rhyming verse. I went to California. I went to college for a semester, left, went to California expecting to become the next Eric B. and Rakim, or maybe the next KRS-One, or maybe the next Run DMC. I saw myself later as kind of a backpacker rapper, as somebody who wrote conscious lyrics, who wrote about issues of justice in my rhyming verse. And just a couple of weeks ago, someone from college, because I did eventually return to college after I did not become a famous rapper, sent me this video. So there I am, your 90s avatar. So if you ever need to watch like Moesha, watch a music video, then follow up with an episode of, I don't know, Smart Guy, then you will have your whole 90s package. So there I was, I went back to college at about 1994, still obsessed with verse. And as I matured, the verse I became obsessed with was that of Black poets. So full circle moment here. I am recently conferred a PhD in English literature and criticism, where I wrote exclusively about Black women poets. And now we get to talk about struggle, activism, liberation, and what verse does to create that. So let me move past that one. We had 3 signature poets, right? We had Asia Monet from this current time. This is our contemporary poet, and we'll get to her incredible work later. And then we moved back a century into the early 1900s to Claude Mckay, who wrote If We Must Die. And we're starting a century prior to that in the 1800s with Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, whose poem was published in 1854. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was born a free Black woman, and she represents the diversity of experiences of Black people in this country. You know, there's a wonderful book by Dr. Evan van Sertima, wonderful Guyanese scholar. And the book is called They Came Before Columbus. And it's all about the African presence in the US prior to that of the infamous Christopher Columbus. This is documented, well documented by historians. Africans in the Americas, as they came to be called, in the Caribbean, and in North America, prior to those quote unquote explorers that we learn about and that we sometimes celebrate in November. This Black woman represents kind of the diversity, as I said, of experience, and that she was born free here in the United States. She showed a penchant for literary gift early on. And although she was born free, she couldn't help but see and empathize with enslaved women and their plight. She knew, probably through stories like Solomon Northrop's 12 Years a Slave. Solomon, they made a movie adaptation about this a few years ago. Solomon Northrop was a contemporary of hers. And he was a man who was a landowner, a trained violinist, a father, a homeowner, a businessman who was tricked and sold to the Deep South and remained enslaved for 12 years and wrote a narrative about it later. So it would have been very present to her that her freedom was tenuous. Now, there's a voice when I said that I heard that said, well, that's the truth today too. That Black people's freedom is kind of tenuous, right? So if you are stopped due to a traffic stop, if you are jogging, if you are having coffee, if you are sleeping next to your boyfriend and you're a beautiful little girl in your 20s like Breonna Taylor, if you are coming home from the corner store with Skittles and an Arizona iced tea, your freedom is tenuous. So her poem, The Slave Mother, was about feeling powerless to white supremacy, was about painting a picture of Black women being unable to protect their children, being able to retain power and decision-making over their own progeny, over what they had birthed. So Lindsay said that she would share the screenshot of the poem with us. Let's look at the poem. Let's look at it. It's an interesting bookend to the third poem, Asia Monet's Say Her Name, hashtag Say Her Name. And are people able to make comments in the chat?
We can even talk, but I didn't want to say any. This is Patricia Thomas.
Hey.
I just want I want to know what the rules of engagement are. Is this more lecture style? So we wait till you finish your presentation and then we have a discussion, or how do you want to do that?
No, your voice sounds like one I want to hear more often. Did you make a connection that you wanted to share?
No, I was just thinking, it's good that you're talking about this poet because I'm less familiar with her, but we do have a lot more Black female poets. You know, I was just thinking about, God, what's her name? She was at Clinton's inauguration, and she got
Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Audre Lorde and Nikki Giovanni.
Yes.
And Phyllis Wheatley. We have a lot more talent. I just wanted to say that, but I'm sure everybody on this call already knows that.
Yes, I'm so glad that you shouted out those names too. Phyllis Wheatley, who was an enslaved poet, and somebody who was taken from West Africa, kidnapped, maybe when she was about 5 or 6 years old, because the family she eventually was owned by reported that when they received her, her 2 front teeth had just left. So if anybody's been around little ones, their 2 front teeth leave around 5 or 6 years old. Just whip smart, just brilliant. Wrote in a formal verse, kind of a Pope-esque type of writer. But thank you so much. That was Patricia? Yes.
Yeah. And the other point I wanted to make was about the freedom. Our freedom is even more tenuous than that. As they called us the Negro. We are defined as the Negro in the Constitution, and we only have our freedom by dint of an amendment to the Constitution. So if certain Congress composition exists, they could literally strip us, amend the Constitution, and remove our freedom. White men are guaranteed their freedom in the Constitution specifically. It is intrinsic. It is part of the Constitution. Women and Negroes, women got the right to vote, and Negroes were afforded like our citizenship just by amendment. So that's why it's so important for everybody to vote tomorrow. That's all I have to say.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you were saying those things, so many connections were coming forward for me. One of the things you said, which I thought was so poignant, was women got the right to vote, but Negroes. And then you finished your sentence. There's a famous book that's called All the Women Are White. And it has something like that in the title. All the women are white, all the men are brave, but all the men are black, all the women are white, but some of us are brave, is the name of that book. Yes. Isn't that a dope title that speaks to actually what Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was trying to do, which was humanize Black women? So that title, all the women are white, all the men are Black, but some of us are brave, speaks to this idea of, number one, no humanity for Black women, and number two, elusiveness of femininity. And, you know, it's so incredible that we have well, I don't know if everybody identifies as female here, but it looks like a femme spirit audience, I'll say that we can talk about this dichotomy between humanity and femininity. Is that the same thing? So I'm not going to read the whole poem, but I want to call your attention to She is a Mother Pale with Fear. It's the 4th stanza. She is a mother pale with fear. Her boy clings to her side, and in her kirtle vainly tries his trembling form to hide. He is not hers, although she bore for him a mother's pains. He is not hers, although her blood is coursing through his veins. He is not hers, for cruel hands may ruddy tear apart the only wreath of household love that binds her breaking heart. All right. So we see a slave mother, but we can tell that the child is male. And we see this sort of tragic play, in a way, reperforming itself throughout history. You know, it's Michael Brown's mother, it's Trayvon Martin's mother, it's over and over and over. It's whoever George Floyd's mother. It's over and over again. It's Black women, their motherhood coming into relief through the death of a son, through the murder of a son. And this is something that Black women writers have grappled with from many different vantage points. I don't know, my intuition is telling me that somebody wanted to make a comment. Unmute and do it.
Well, the only thing I observe, which is also in Phyllis Wheatley's writing, is the very Eurocentric education that they both obviously had. She referred to the boy like in her kirtle vainly tries to hide him. And the kirtle, I believe, is a Scottish term for like a kind of skirt that they wore.
Mm-hmm.
And then about her face being pale with fear. I noticed that there is that, it could be period specific, but it seems rather turgidly Eurocentric as far as how and maybe they had to express themselves in such terms because their audience was largely white who would expect that type of style.
Oh, yes. I think that that's an incredible observation. You made me think of Paul Laurence Dunbar. In every Black community of size, there's a school named for Dunbar. If you meet a Black person from any Black community of size, there was a Dunbar Elementary or Dunbar High School. And Paul Laurence Dunbar was somebody who wrote in dialect. But it was a double-edged sword for him sometimes. You know, there were moments when his mostly white audiences didn't understand that he was paying loving homage to working Black people's talk. He was not doing minstrel work. Beautiful Brown Baby or When Melindy Sings, those are poems that when you read them, they're so loving. They're almost too sweet. They're so sentimental about this fat little sweet baby, or when this, you know, it's a male gaze listening to a woman that he just is adoring with her terrible singing voice. But I mean, he used to really struggle with that, with feeling out of integrity, feeling like, am I going in front of white people making fun of Black people? That's not what I think I'm doing. But I see their reaction as, you know, one of disrespect. Like, oh, ho, 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 do the N-word talk for us again. We love it when you do that. You know, people throwing chicken up on the stage. He used to have a poem called Who That Say Chicken in This House? I don't know about y'all, but fried chicken is delicious. Okay. I don't think this is a race thing. But when you live in a country like the US, where white supremacy uses everything to reinforce its hierarchy, reinforce dominance, then, you know, even a delicious fried meal becomes a race signal. But yes, I am certain that in order to be published, that for a woman, it would seem that writing in dialect, writing in working class Black talk, probably didn't happen until into the 1900s. So if this poem came out in 1854, that means we're a decade or more before the Emancipation Proclamation. So we're in that descent to the war. And this need to really bring forward Black people's humanity and the incredible number of violent revolts that are going on. Nobody writes about that in the US because it kind of goes against the party line of a clean move to the US getting religion and freeing Black people. But that is not how it happened. There was a coexisting war that slid into the Civil War. The number of revolts, the number of maroon colonies where Black people would collaborate with indigenous people and form families and whole other tribes. it was at a fever pitch. So this poem represents kind of when we think about the 1960s, and we think about Pete Seeger, and we think about, Nikki Giovanni and Amiri Baraka, and we think about the labor movement and the Weather Underground and Abby Hoffman. When we think about, everybody was just anti-war, looking at what it meant to be in love, what gender meant, what sex, all of that. That was this period before the Civil War. All kind of lynching around the idea of enslavement. Are we all monsters? I'm a white family. My family gifted me a servant as my wedding gift. Am I a monster? I didn't ask for that. Oh, wait a minute. Black people have fled to Canada. Is Canada now better? What does it mean to give up? If you lose hope that the U.S. will change, have you lost hope totally? Is the U.S. an all-encompassing moral ruler that if you love it, you love everything? If you hate the U.S., you hate everything. All of those were swirling around, and this poem is just one of those incredible things that were published and collaborated on a multiracial level. Because who do you think had the printing presses? Who do you think was spiriting these poems out to places so that people who had never thought that Black women were human would think, oh, you mean they missed those babies? They missed the babies? I thought they were just baby making machines. We called the Black men bucks. So we've anthropomorphized them. We've turned them into animals in our mind. So poems like this did the work of rehumanizing us. Comments, connections, enlargements.
I just want to say thanks. That's a very beautiful explanation of, the situation that this poetry was written under. Hers and Wheatley's, it was pre-slavery. I hadn't thought of, I'm not as familiar actually with Frances. I've seen her name, but I'm not as familiar with her poetry. So I guess I'll try to read more, find out what her opus was or why we still know her name,
Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Let's move to our second featured writer, because we situated tonight's discussion around three writers: Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, Claude Mckay, and Asia Monet. Now, Claude Mckay was part of a literary movement that a lot of us are really familiar with. I taught high school English for a number of years, and I would always do my Harlem Renaissance unit. Because how else are we going to start talking about Langston Hughes, one of the greatest of all time, if we don't do a Harlem Renaissance unit? So Claude Mckay was one of the Harlem Renaissance poets, but he actually was from the Caribbean. So he was a part of the diaspora, the split seed. That is what Black people who are descendant of Africans, but are all over the world, call ourselves the diaspora. So the diaspora is in Veracruz, Mexico, and it's in Cuba and St. Kitts and Puerto Rico, and the diaspora is represented in the US and with Jamaican people who went to Britain, and all over the Western world is the African diaspora. In the Caribbean, where lots of islands were colonized by England, there is a pipeline, and families for generations have been coming to New York City. And it is why St. Louis is a Jamaican food desert. This is why we can't get a decent beef patty except for one place around here, because the Caribbeans wouldn't come to our snowy area. So they came to New York City, and they've been coming to New York City. That relationship has been there for about 200 years. The relationship between free Caribbean people coming to New York City. So Claude Mckay was one of those people who immigrated to New York City. And this is a fantastic sonnet. The last two lines are the turn in the sonnet. That's how you can sometimes tell that things are sonnets very easily without counting syllables and counting lines. If the last two lines are a couplet that kind of turn, kind of give us a resolution, then we know, oh, this must be a sonnet. Notice that it also is a humanizing poem. Do you guys see all of the animal imagery in it? Right? We can't be like hogs. They're all around us, mad and hungry dogs. Then it goes on to talk about that moment when you realize, hey, I would rather die struggling for justice than to live as a coward, to live trying to be safe. Right in the middle of the poem, it says, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. Oh, kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows, deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men will face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. So sometimes when you read about slave revolts, you wonder, what were they thinking? How are you going to go up against the US government? You're obviously not going to win. The blessed and saintly John Brown, he went to an armory and tried to steal the US government's guns and lead a revolt with like 11 people. You know, it's you have to admit that they knew it was, not going to end with a mass movement of all enslaved people saying, oh, they should be our leaders, and overthrowing slavery. It's about that one death blow and about being a standard bearer for the people who live to see it. And this poem is where Black people were 40 years before it. This is where Black people were. When Black people walked out of the fields with their scythes and they walked up to enlist in the Union Army, this is the point they were at. Just if we die, fine. But there's no turning back. Now, some people believe at various moments that young people agitating in the streets have been in this moment, in this place. Usually when those of us who are not at ground zero with protests, but we're watching it in some capacity. We get that feeling, that moment, that glimpse of that one young person's face, the energy from the crowd, from a news video, where we can feel that they're past the point of negotiation. And they're writing some powerful poetry about that as well. Now, Claude Mckay was also a queer man. But that identity was one that he shared with a cadre of, I don't know, I had a beautiful friend in Alabama call it the glass closet. I asked him about Truman Capote, his fellow Alabamian. I said, did people not think he was gay? Even the little boy they had play him in To Kill a Mockingbird was a little queer boy. It was real obvious. And he said, oh no, that's called the glass closet. As long as you don't use the word gay, you can be very gay. So Claude Mckay and other poets and other artists and other writers, like all creative movements, right? Think theater kids when we were in high school. Like all creative movements, had a way of drawing beautiful, brilliant queer people. And, it's an interesting facet of his biography because there are lots of queer historians and queer writers who've uncovered all of these parties and associations and leftist communist activity. Because the Harlem Renaissance was also the moment right before the McCarthy era, where people were being organized and thinking about economic and political systems differently and openly joining the Communist Party. Before US folklore taught us that to even think the word communist is to be anti-American. So his life as an immigrant, as a queer man, as a writer, as a creative, really stands as an interesting testament. There's so much to explore there. Would anybody like to comment on Claude Mckay, his poetry?
I just, as a child, I was really kind of I guess you could say, a social activist. I did a lot of picket lines, protests.
Yes.
For like against apartheid in South Africa and to keep the only Black public hospital open, Homer G. Phillips and stuff like that, voter registration drives, you name it. And I was also the historian. I was in the NAACP youth group, and I was their historian. And I recited this poem at my school. I memorized it and recited it, in a dramatic fashion or whatever.
So what school did you go to?
Well, once I hit the 5th grade, I was in the gifted program. So this was before that. I lived in North St. Louis in the 21st ward, and I went to Ashland School.
Okay.
And so, which was, I think, on Taylor Avenue or whatever. But yeah, we did celebrate Black History Month. And during that, I remember we all picked a different famous Black character and dressed up like them. And
yes,
yeah. This is before even, Martin Luther King Day existed. That was still, you put your Martin King buttons on, and that was the big struggle to try to get a national holiday. But one thing I noticed, once you pointed out this poem and you said it was a great sonnet and stuff, I don't know anything. I don't remember the poet rules or whatever, but I happen to notice some other patterns, like every other line rhymes, like hogs and dogs, spot and lot, die and defy, shed and dead, and that the ends with the 2 rhyming lines. So is that what what that means, or did he just make this even more unique by doing that?
Well, when you talked about that kind of turgid European education, now nobody can get a more turgid European education than a Caribbean Black person. So I am certain that he wrote sonnets in school. But yes, there are different kinds of sonnets, and they have different numbers of syllables in them, different numbers of lines, and the rhyme schemes are different. And this is one kind of sonnet, yes, with the wonderful couplet at the end. But yeah, he was writing in form. I absolutely love your name. I'm a member of Sister Care. This is Karen. Hey, Karen. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Caribbean people with the English colonization. So yeah, he often wrote in form and rhyme, use rhyme.
Yeah, I will say that I am, of course, most familiar with the sonnet form in association with Shakespeare. And granted, I've not read all 100+ sonnets that he wrote, but a lot of the famous ones, of course, are the love sonnets. And
Yes.
so to me, that's kind of my frame of reference always for a sonnet. And then to read Claude Mckay's poetry with such stark imagery and the just the energy, I guess, in this poem, and as you said, that what's just the idea of we've all got to start from somewhere in our struggle, that even if we face certain defeat, that I feel like If We Must Die really breaks open the format of the sonnet, and what maybe the history prior to this was it. And so like really just opening up poetry in general to talking about these these big topics and everything. Obviously Frances Ellen Watkins Harper did that as well.
Anyway. Yeah, I think what you've made is an incredible observation. And there are some other scholars who've also written about that, what does it mean to take a white form, a European form, and use it to agitate against European political policy. Because if European political policy is colonization and it's an anti-colonial poem, or if white political policy is enslavement and it's an anti-slavery poem, what does that mean to take a form made by your oppressors and turn it against the oppression? It's really a beautiful thing. Really a beautiful thing. Come off of sharing the screen because I want to share the final poet, Asia Monet. And I have a note here, and I'm going to put my email address in the chat for everybody who might want to contact me. I love to talk about poetry, and I love to read other people's poetry. I was hoping somebody had brought some tonight. Get brave. I know the poet is here, whoever they are. Is it you, Patricia?
No,
Patricia, don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid. I just don't write it.
Oh, okay.
Technical
Maybe
writer.
it's Karen or Katrina. We'll see. We shall see. I wanted to share with you this incredible performance of the Asia Monet poem, Say Her Name. #say her name. I can find the video. It's on the internet in several places. All right, so this one is a good one. Do they have a description? No, they don't. All right, so say her name. There it is. It's on YouTube. So turn that off. All right, so how many of you are familiar with the case of Sandra Bland? Is everybody familiar with the case of Sandra Bland? Yes. Karen
Yes.
said no. Patricia said yes. Katrina, are you familiar with the case of Sandra Bland?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So for the benefit of Karen, there was a young woman who had just gotten a job in Arkansas. And she was driving down south. This happened 6 years ago now. I think it was 6 years ago. Let me see. So she was driving down south, and she was pulled over by a policeman who told her that she illegally went into another lane. And when the policeman, it was July 13th, 2015, 3 days after she was arrested. So it's been 5 years now. She let her window down just a smidge. She was very irritated about being pulled over for what she thought was no reason. And at no point did she speak respectfully to him. She was quick, she was irritated, and she was ready to go because she knew she was on her way to get her new job. She didn't need any racist foolishness from some cop pulling her over in these weird Southern towns. And I don't know, he was unable to deal with it. He was unable to deal with her asking him why he had pulled her over. And the reason we know this is because there's video of the exchange. She also was smoking in her car. He told her, why don't you put your cigarette out? And she asked, is it illegal for me to have this cigarette? He escalated. He wound up hog tying her, arms and hands together, picking her up like a package and throwing her in the back of the police car. 3 days later, she was found hanging in her cell. That police department said that she committed suicide. And many of us do not believe that. It's quite coincidental that she decided to kill herself at this moment on her way to go to a new job. It was an interesting choice. Also, the choice of hanging for Black women is unusual. Everybody commits suicide. Everybody, all races, all genders. But the hanging for Black people is an interesting choice, not a usual one. So this poem is called Say Her Name because after Sandra Bland's mysterious death, and I'm putting my email in the chat, that was the call, that was the hashtag say her name.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Even if she did commit suicide, it still was brought on by intimidation, which is you can still be, in my opinion, it's still murder if you bullied or intimidated or made somebody feel so low. You stripped them of who they were. You stripped her of who she was. And she had nothing left at that point. Not that I believe it was suicide, but it still was brought on by an act of someone else.
I never remember saying she had a history of mental illness or that she was on any antidepressants. I never read anything that would have indicated that she had threatened to do such a thing before. So it's very fishy and I think a bunch of BS.
Yeah. And this, what you both have said is part of the conversation, the larger conversation, that Black folks have been having with the dominant culture in this country for a while. That sort of healthy paranoia, that reticence to believe the first story, we're used to that. We're used to not automatically believing what those in authority in this country tell us. And, you know, every few somethings, there are some things that happen, and all of a sudden our beloved white friends go, well, they were just lying. I can't believe they got on television and just lied. And we're thinking, yeah, that's how it works. That's what happened. They just lied. I have always been uneasy, very uneasy about Sandra Bland's death. And I'm even less at ease because I watched the video leading up to it. And, you know, the whole hog tying and picking someone up by their hands and feet when there was no crime committed and no real arrestable offense other than I'm irritated with you, so my tone and volume have not remained in a subservient place. It makes me think of If We Must Die, that she may have been at that moment where she just said, I'm so tired. I'm just exhausted. Mm-hmm. Karen says she does remember the occurrence, saw the video, however, sad to say I did not remember her name. Well, that you segue properly into watching this incredible poet read about not just Sandra Bland, but all the names that she would like us to remember. And there's Sandra's beautiful face with her little baby dreads. May she rise in power.
Practice, and I've been using Doodly now for a few weeks to create these really fun videos to share with patients, prospective patients on social.
Say her name. I am a woman carrying other women in my mouth. Behold, a sister, a daughter, a mother, dear friend. Spirits demystified in a comrade's tone, they gather to exhale, breathe, a dance with death we know is not the end. All these nameless bodies haunted by pellet wounds in their chests. Listen for us in the saying of a name you cannot pronounce. Black and woman is a sort of magic you cannot hashtag the mere weight of it, too vast to be held. We hold ourselves, an inheritance felt between the hips, woman of soft darkness, portal of light. Watch them envy the revolution of our movement. We break open to give life flow. Why the terror of our tears, torment of our tastes. My rage is righteous. My love is righteous. My name be righteous. Hear what I am not here to say. We too have died. We know we are dying too. I am not here to say, look at me, how I died so brutal a death I deserve a name to fit all the horror in. I am here to tell you how if they mention me in their protests and their rallies, they would have to face their role in it too. My beauty too. I have died many times before the blow to the body. I have bled many months before the bullet to the flesh. We know the body is not the end. Call it what you will, but for all the hands, cuff wrists of us, the shackled ankles of us, the bend over to make room for you of us, how dare we speak anything less than I love you, we who love just as loudly in the thunderous rain as when the sun shines golden on our skin and the world kisses us unapologetically. We be so beautiful when we be. How you gonna be free without me? Your freedom is tied up with mine at the nappy edge of our souls, singing for all our sisters. Watch them stretch their arms in my voice, how they fly open-chested toward your ear. Listen for Rakia Boyd, Tanisha Anderson, Yvette Smith, Ayanna Jones, Kayla Moore, Shelley Frey, Miriam Carey, Kendra James, Alberta Spruill, Tarika Wilson, Sharice Francis, Chantel Davis, Melissa Williams, Darnisha Harris, Michelle Casso, Pearlie Golden, Katherine Johnston, Eleanor Bumpers, Natasha McKenna, Shaniqua Proctor, Sandra Bland. We are each saying we do not vanish in the bated breath of our brothers. Show me a man willing to fight beside me, my hand in his, the color of courage. There is no mountaintop worth seeing without us. Meet me in the trenches where we lay our bodies down, in the valley of a voice. Say it, just say her name.
Woo. Yes. So as I said at the beginning of the presentation, that it would be this incredible bookend between Asia Monet's poem and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper's poem, because they both were about women, even though the woman in Frances Ellen Watkins' poem is nameless. But it's still about this humanizing. You know, one of the things that occurred in Black culture and Black community is the incredible importance of names. Mm-hmm. Don't call me out of my name. Don't call me out of my name. I didn't send for you. I didn't call for you. You know, all of this information in names. You know, right now I'm teaching writing at a high school in East St. Louis, Illinois. And they have these incredible names: Treviante, LaQuishana. All of their names sound like perfumes. And you can tell that their family wanted to distinguish them. It's a different kind of feeling than what happens in a lot of white families, where there's another George or another Colton or another Chloe or another Daniel. In Black families, there seems to be a move to make yourself stand out, to make your name signature. And as someone who's lost their mother, my mother died in 2005. One of the things that's painful about it is that no one says her name anymore. I don't live in a place where people know her. So her name doesn't get brought up anymore. We are so tied to our names, what people call us and what we call ourselves. And this poem really talks about how that litany of names at the end is a roll call designed to help us remember that they existed, that people named them, that people wrote down their names, that people saved spots for them, texted them, call them, address things to them, filled in their name on a list so that they could get some of what they were getting. And when those names stop being called, that means that you've been forgotten. So what were some of your connections to that poem?
I have a few things, well, two things that I thought about when you said about the naming of African Americans. Just like the way we like to dress to represent ourselves because we were not allowed to. So, you know, us being able to pick our own names, that's power. I have to like it, but this is my name to myself, or I gave it to my child. It wasn't forced upon me. The master didn't pick this name for me. I'm free.
Yes. And so many names are aspirational. You know, I come from a family of people who name folks aspirational names. The name Treasure is a revolt. That is this girl is precious. I don't care how dark she turns out to be, how coarse her hair turns out to be. We might be in the projects in Meridian, Mississippi. I might be a single mom who has not finished college, but guess what I gave birth to? A treasure. And every time you address her, you're going to have to agree with me. So yes, Katrina, I also think it's very African. When I went to South Africa, I met people with incredible names, and then they always tell you the meaning. So, you know, they would say, oh, my name is Sanake Finkentene. And it means she comes with blessings for us all. And I'm like, yes! Yes, blessings for us all. So yes, it's definitely a response to enslavement, but also an Africanism. It's also an ancestral gift, definitely. Other connections.
So I want to share an experience I had recently on Zoom. It was a group of people who are advocating for racial equality. And the one young woman works in a nursing setting. And she said it really disturbed her that her white employees that she works with were always making fun of the Black names. And she didn't know what to say to them. Well, Dr. Treasure, you just gave me the answer. And I will try to find her email address and send it to her because she was very distressed about how she could bring it up without creating friction with her coworkers. And one of the other white women said, well, you just do it. You just say it. You just say, you know, you disturb me with making fun of their names. And this was a younger woman. And I thought I could just see her being so totally uncomfortable. But your explanation is so powerful. And I am here tonight. I don't know why I'm here tonight because I don't read that much poetry. I used to years ago. I know nothing about Black poetry, which now I'm very enthralled to find out. And to have you come and speak to our group Sisters Care, because there's some Black women there I think would just be so thrilled to hear your empowerment. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, you brought up an interesting dilemma that we've been talking about. When I say we, I just mean beloved community, like those of us in the US who turn around the ways to increase the health, wealth, and safety for Black people, whether we're Black or white. This idea, I call him, sometimes I think I used to call him Uncle Ted, racist Uncle Ted. You know, there's a version of this that occurs in Black families, not around race, but around sex. So that it might be homophobic, Uncle Ted. But it seems like in white families, it's racist Uncle Ted. Where, you know, in many ways, he's an incredible guy. Like, he will give you the down payment for your house. He can change a flat tire. He's a wonderful guy, but, you know, When he starts to talk about race, it's hashtag problematic. And your friend was talking about being, afraid of making waves. But what I always advocate for is just stating how it makes you feel and then refusing to move forward into a debate. So, like you said, I don't feel comfortable when you make fun of those names.
Right.
And if they try to go into a debate, there's nothing to debate. I told you how I feel. I haven't told you I require that you stop it, right? But I don't feel comfortable with it. It's not funny to me. I don't find it funny at all. And then you just keep it moving because you've made your point. Usually those racist Uncle Ted elements, they don't want to hear about 400 years of slavery anyway.
Oh, right.
It's just gonna bolster their their whole thesis, their whole stance. They're like, oh, see, you just want to make me feel guilty. I wasn't alive then. Every argument in the book. So it's just best to just take your stand and then move forward.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
All right, we've been on here a little over an hour. I have so enjoyed talking about these poems and these issues with you. I want to give people another chance to kind of reflect out as we're moving into our election season and what you're planning for the remainder of this year. We've just got a little while left in this year. In order to make sure you increase your own health, wealth, and safety. I want to hear something good from each of you, something that you're working on or you're finishing or you're looking forward to. All right, Karen raised her hand.
Okay, so I saw a very brief little vignette with the Dalai Lama, and he was asked the question, what can we do with what you're saying, with this stress and anxiety that we are living with? And he said, practice compassion. Every morning, 1 minute, practice compassion. So he kind of went on a little bit. And so I Googled, how do you practice compassion? And I got 4 pages with 7 practices. And then there's a group of Ursuline sisters who are going to do a Friday night and a Saturday on compassion, a Zoom meeting in January. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try to practice compassion. And then it said, you do it in the morning, you do it in the afternoon. He said you can do it while you're scrolling on your phone so that it's always in the back of your mind. I'm thinking of compassion. So that's what I'm going to
do. That's a beautiful meditation.
Yeah.
Patricia or Katrina, something good. Tell me something good, as Rufus and Shaka Khan said.
Well, I'm going to start a new business. And the reason why that even matters, because I don't really think jobs matter, is that I left a very toxic situation that actually ended up with me getting a cardiac catheterization because I had all these cardiac arrhythmias. The stress was killing me. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also, of course, going to do things like try to eat a more vegetarian, vegan-esque diet. I can't convert entirely to that ever. I can't ever be a theist about food because I have so many food allergies. I'm allergic to corn, soy, wheat, just peanuts, like almost everything you could think of. So I have to kind of eat what I tolerate and I can never just, go whole hog into any kind of discipline like that.
Tell me just a little bit more about your business. I'm excited about that.
I'm going to be a notary, like a full-time notary though.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm pretty good with words and things like that. I used to be an auditor. I was a QA specialist, scientist. And so I'm not ruling out doing that in some capacity, but I don't want to do it like like I used to do it, which was in a corporate environment that was very toxic, with people having meetings that about like where things that were my job were discussed, but they would just have one-on-ones or two-on-twos together and not invite me to meetings. And I had 20 something years of experience. I was the only auditor there who had 2 certifications, and it was just a bunch of BS. It was very racist in a corporate way. So,
I just posted on Facebook. I asked the question, have you ever left a well-paying job and why? And the responses were exactly what you were saying. Over and over again, people said, my sanity was at stake. My health was at stake. I had to go. I had to go. So I'm glad that you chose your health. Hi, Jennifer. We're about to end it.
I know. I just got in. I thought like, hey.
Katrina, with the wonderful comment about the names and the connection about the names. Tell me something good.
Well, I want to continue doing what I do. I practice being empathetic towards people. I have a thing about resources. If I know something, you know it, or you know to come to me. So just actually writing those resources down and having them in a handy spot, I would like to be able to do that, because every other day somebody's calling me about something. Research. So it's time for me to go back to school. Because I love researching. If I can be a full-time researcher, that's what I would do.
Really? Yes. Okay. Well, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to bounce ideas. I'd definitely be open to it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good people. It has been fantastic. I have so enjoyed you.
Well, we need to hear from you, Treasure.
My good thing. What? Oh, yes. Well, Lindsay knows a little bit of my good thing. I'm actually headed to Tanzania, East Africa. I'm going to be leaving Wednesday, and I'll be gone until the 14th of this month. And I'm really, really excited to see Dar es Salaam, which is a city on the coast of Tanzania. And if you're not familiar with Tanzania, that's where the Lion King is set. Basically, even though I'm not going on safari. I went to South Africa years ago with a group that was very safari interested. And I've had enough safari. I'm fine with safari, but they do have all 5 big cats. I mean, it's incredible. Mount Kilimanjaro, you know the thing. No, but I'm trying to go and eat good African food and dance to Afrobeat and just be on the beach. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm really, really excited about it. And if you come follow me on Facebook, you might see some pictures and video.
Great. And what about Lindsay?
Yeah, well, we're moving into these cold, dark months and in the middle of a pandemic. So I think what's on my plate right now is just to figure out how to rework how I operate in the world and how to make connections with people. And I really, especially in colder months, I like cooking a whole lot. So I'm hoping to see if I can, I miss cooking for people. So I am hoping to look into ways that I can continue to share that with people. So
thank you.
All right. Good people. I've enjoyed it, as I said, and I'm going to stay here with Lindsay just a bit. But I put my email in the chat, and I would love to hear from you. And this has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
So much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Redmond.
Thank you. Shantae.
Hey.
So the right as it's ending, girl.